You're listening to Conversations in Bed with me, Joleene
and me, Ken Case.
This is the freshest, funnest, most fantastical podcast out there that supports healthy, polarized relationships that takes place right in our bed. Don't go anywhere. We're about to give you the goods on love, life, and leaning into truly powerful relationships right now. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Conversations in Bed. I am Joleene.
And I'm Ken Case.
And as always, we are so grateful that you have joined us. We have a great episode. I say that every time because it's true, but we have an incredible guest who is going to be talking to us about communication. And this kind of comes on the heels of an episode you and I did about how to have proper, healthy communication as a couple. So her name is LaCroix. I love to say that name. And she is going to talk to us about effective communication using the masculine and feminine. She's a speaking coach and teacher, but I like to say this was on her website. She's a communication muse. And when you meet her, you're going to completely understand why that title matches exactly who she is. But before we dive in, what is in your mug, my love?
In my mug today, we're back to Brooks Beans from Concord, California, our sponsor, our first sponsor that we had. And this is the morning motivation, which is a nice medium roast and kind of the one I keep going back to. All the stuff is delicious, but please visit the website. Again, we're on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast, so it's a pleasure to be able to get this.
Yes, his name is Greg Berkowitz. The website is right here, berksbeans.com. We encourage you to give it a shot. He's been so generous with us. He's basically our steadfast sponsor. Conversations in Bed wouldn't be Conversations in Bed if we didn't have coffee.
That's true.
So it's very crucial that we have coffee.
Yes.
And Ted has joined us. Ted is pruning himself right now. But Ted, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to chime in. And of course, we always ask a question of each other to take each other off guard. And here's my question to you.
This is always interesting.
Yeah, okay. Especially because I'm not fully prepared right now to know what the question is. But here's my question to you.
Okay.
If you could create a nonprofit agency, what would it be?
Interesting. Oh, there's so many things that I'm passionate about, but I think, a nonprofit agency that I would create, I think I would tend to go towards something that doesn't have a lot of exposure. And by that, I mean, there's so many great causes out there that have a lot of momentum behind them. I would try to find something, whether it was, being in the medical field, maybe if it was something, research on a given topic or whatever it may be. So probably something along those lines. And of course, I would always have to go for, animal rescue too. Yes. Yeah. And domestic violence has always been close to my heart. So and on a serious note, that is truly one that I would, want to do also to help people in those situations. So, yeah.
We had a conversation about both of those things, and I was very pleased when you spoke to the domestic violence. And animal rescue is something that, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of this time. And
go right ahead, yeah.
Knowing you're a pilot and knowing that I want to create acreage for senior animals and animals that need extra care, where they can run free, where they don't have to worry about their home, their bed, their food, nothing. Even if they don't get adopted out, this is their home. And I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of dogs. And Teddy, please don't be offended. Cats are welcome. Absolutely, cats are welcome. But we could fly. I know there's pilots out there that do that.
I actually have a friend who's a pilot with a major airline who has his own plane. Yep, and he does that. He goes and rescues and brings up. Yeah, so it's great cause.
Beautiful.
Great cause.
Well, we're going to have to get you a plane.
Okay, sounds good.
We're going to manifest that plane. And we're going to manifest our next threesome with LaCroix. And there she is, this beautiful creature, Lisa.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on your show.
So grateful. And the connection that we had, you came into one of my lives, but the similarities between our careers, the experiences we've had, and how we have channeled them into the work we do today.
It's so true. When I saw your website and realized, wow, we have between coming from media, you as a producer and me as a performer, and then bringing it into helping people to find their voice and tell their story and using all the same skills. And then, of course, having a podcast.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Beautiful. So the reason I wanted to snatch you up today is you are a communicator, you are a speaker, and you help people, and you've got a lot going on with your programs and what you do. But I wanted to hone in on the masculine feminine awareness and how we can use that language, not just in a relationship dynamic, but even at work. So if I can throw the first question at you, can you first define what effective speaking is and why you teach on this concept?
I think effective speaking has three major components to it. Well, actually, it has many components to it, but just for simplicity's sake, let's focus on three. And the three that I would pick are, first one is authenticity. That means that you know who you are. You're coming from a place of self-awareness. You know what it is that you intend. So you know the vision that you're after, and you're connected to the truth of that in all things and all times. The second thing is clarity. That means being concise, being able to communicate what it is that you want to share in a way that, again, goes back to authenticity. That is also authentic, but that is clear, easy to understand. And there's all kinds of, we can break down all of these components into the things that support that. But the third thing I would say is engagement and energy. And so if you can share what it is that you want in a concise way with people in a way that comes from embodiment and engagement and is clear, then you have the starting point for effective speaking. Now, the important thing I want to note is that effective speaking is one part of the larger aspect of communication, which is truly my passion, because it's great if you can speak in an authentic way that's clear and concise, in a way that's embodied and engaged. But the larger components of listening and connecting are so much more important than being an effective speaker in and of itself.
Talk to me about that listening aspect, because in my field of work, working with new reporters or new producers, teaching them the importance of listening has been the greatest challenge. Expand on that. The importance of listening.
Well, listening is, of course, how we connect and how we know that what we're saying is landing, and is how we deepen our connection, how we get to know the other person more. And so how we ask questions. And I want to talk a little bit more. I hope we get a chance to talk about some of the skill sets that would be involved. But when we're effective at listening to another person, they feel seen, they feel understood, they feel like you care. You go a long way to building trust and rapport. And of course, those are central things to having a connection. And going back to the initial question you asked that I didn't answer, why do I teach this? Because I believe that how we express ourselves in the world in terms of speaking is super important, especially for women, because for so many generations, we've been invited to be small or to hold ourselves back or to not tell our stories. And I believe that when we can connect with something that's super important to us, that's meaningful, and have effective ways to share it and communicate it, to take up space, to tell our stories, we not only get our own self-expression, creativity, and just joy, but we also build relationships. And relationships, circling back to listening and engagement, are the lifeblood of our human experience. And in so many ways, now more than ever, we are missing each other. And so if I can support people in small or large ways to being fully self-expressed and developing kind of relationships that are based on authenticity and rapport and true connection, then I feel like I'm changing the world in just a little way.
Well, let's talk about some of these skills.
There are three skills that I think are some of the most important, the most go-to skills that can be used in deepening rapport, communicating, listening, being more effective. And they are NVC, Nonviolent communication, there's a 4-step basic approach to nonviolent communication, which I think is powerful in when you're desiring to be understood, to be heard, to create a connection. The second one is comes from Imago dialogue, Harville Hendricks, and it is called mirroring. It's approach to listening and to deepening your understanding of another person. And the third one is what I'll call a 1-minute embodied expression or 1-minute artistic expression. So that's a lot. I will try to give a little bit of detail on each of them, knowing that we're just scratching the surface of each of them.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. So nonviolent communication has at its core a 4-step process where you share in a difficult situation what you feel. And that would sound like, when this circumstance happened, I felt. And it's a really challenging thing for human beings to truly come from their I experience and how they feel, because we so often go to blame in communication. And so it's a practice to say, I feel, and getting under the surface of the feeling. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel worried. And then the second thing is to say, because my need for something, because I wanted what you were wanting, because my need for connection, because I wanted connection. So when you shut the door, when you slammed the door, I felt sad because my need for connection wasn't met. And then you say what it is that you want. I would love more time with you. And then the fourth is a request. Would you be willing to put aside every night from 8 to 8:30 for me? So 4-part step: what you feel in relationship to an experience, what the need was not met, what you want, and your request. Imago dialogue, using mirroring so many times, and feel free to interject.
No, this is fantastic.
Okay. So Imago dialogue uses a technique called mirroring that is super powerful when you're enmeshed in a problem, in a difficulty. And in Imago dialogue, one person would say, I have something I would like to share with you. Would you be willing to listen, or would you be willing to mirror me? And, say, Ken would say, sure, Joleene, or Ken might say, not right now, because I'm in the middle of this email, but give me 15 minutes and then let's meet in the living room.
Mhm.
Great. You have an agreement. Then Joleene, you would come and say, I want to share this experience that I'm having, and here's what it is. You want to say 2, 3, 4 sentences, not a whole long book. And then Ken would say, Joleene, what I hear you saying is repeating back what Ken has heard. Then Joleene, you would say, that's right. Or you might say, no, I didn't say that. That's not what I said. In fact, what I said was da 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 da. You say it again. And then Ken says, oh, okay, what I hear you saying is blah, 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 and repeats it back, mirrors back what you said, Joleene. And then hopefully you get to a place, Joleene, where Joleene says, you've got it exactly right. That is what I said. And it's amazing what happens when someone plays back and mirrors back what you have said and your experience. So hopefully you get to a point where you say, yes, thank you for hearing me. That is what I said. At that point, Ken takes it up a notch and says, is there more? So Joleene then gets a chance to think, actually, there is one other thing I want to share. And that is, and then Joleene shares the other thing. Ken says, oh, what I think I hear you saying now is, and then plays it back. Joleene continues the process. No, not really like that. What I meant was this. And you want to get it exactly right. You want to get it to that sweet spot where the person being mirrored says, yeah, it's almost like your body settles into this relaxation where it feels so good to be seen and heard. Yes, that is exactly what I said. At that point, Ken can even say, well, that makes sense. It makes sense that you would feel that way. It doesn't matter if Ken agrees with you or feels the same way. But the powerful aspect of Ken saying, it makes sense, or I can understand how you would feel that way, or thank you for sharing. And you have amazing connection that we don't get in our everyday ways of communicating because we fall into habitual patterns based on, all our traumas, all our histories, our habits. So, and then the third one, this comes from my embodiment work in polarity in my studies with John Wineland as a student. And he has a different name for it, but for now, I'm going to call it a 1 minute artistic expression. And that's when you have something that's been probably mad. Okay. You're always leaving your shoes on the floor. And Ken's always leaving his shoes on the floor. It drives me nuts. I really, and so maybe you say something or maybe you don't. Sometimes people will say things like, can you pick up your shoes? I've told you 5 times to pick up your shoes. Now, what happens, Ken, if I say, would you pick up your shoes, Ken?
This episode is made possible thanks to Burke's Beans, a gourmet coffee roaster out of Concord, California. Organic and sustainable coffee beans made your way. Visit burksbeans.com to place your order. Also, special thanks to Rachel Oatman Day for the t-shirts we wear. We're so grateful for your support. If you'd like to sponsor Conversations in Bed, drop us an email at Joleene@takeyourvoiceback.com. The email address is in show notes. Now back to the goods.
Ken's not going to be very happy. Mostly he's going to either withdraw or he's going to get mad. He's going to respond in a similar way. But what if Joleene said, you know what? Can I give you a little bit of an artistic expression for 1 minute? Can you feel how I feel? And what if she says, Ken, when you drop your shoes on the floor and you don't pick them up, I feel like killing, and does an embodied artistic expression of the truth of the feeling in a way that's going to have Ken both understand it and relate to it, but also brings a little bit of levity, and it's also time boxed. Even if it's not done with humor, even if it's, I'm so mad, I just got done, driving me crazy, you're always putting your shoes on the floor. Even if it's just pure expression, at some point you're probably going to be laughing. And even if you're not, Joleene, we're going to feel like we've been expressed, and we can only do it for so long. Ken knows it's only going to last for a minute. And so those are the 3 skills that I would outline in a brief 5-minute monologue.
Brilliant. When you work, do you work with couples or individuals?
I work with couples and individuals, both.
Do you find any resistance with that third one? Because as I'm going through, I'm like, 2, mirroring, I like that. Yeah. The third one, I've been on stage and screen. I have no problem being animated. Do people resist it? Do they see the power of it when they try it?
Of the 3, I would say it's the least known. Many people have heard of mirroring if you've been around the personal development, relational work, and NVC's also gotten a fair amount of attention. Luckily, I'm so happy for that. But I would say that idea of artistic expression is a little bit outside the comfort zone for a lot of people. So I don't really, because people see the benefit of it and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I haven't noticed too much resistance, although I would say that it does take some practice and some evolving into to get to, because the truth is we are mostly not very embodied in our culture. Generally, our disagreements, our conversations are very head-oriented. And so simply the idea of connecting with our bodies and saying, what do I really feel? And then being willing to express it. Like you said, you have a background as a performer and as an expresser, as do I. For some people, it takes them a little bit longer to learn embodiment, to practice breath, to check in with themselves, to build the skills. And some of that is the support that I would give to people.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to go back real quick in the very beginning. I love how you brought listening to the forefront when it comes to communicating and speaking, because so often, I'm sure we've all experienced it. People listen to respond as opposed to listening to learn. And so I think that's really important. I think the listening that you brought up is like spot on. Number one, you got to listen to be able to formulate your response and to formulate your language that you're going to use to be accepted. And I love that came in. It didn't even dawn on me looking at the topic that would be, but that's key. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, what they say, you teach what you need to learn. And for me, I am a verbal processor, and that can be a segue into me sharing a little bit about what I see as being feminine speaking and masculine speaking and how I like to use those. But I'm a verbal processor. So I think out loud. I discover what it is that I believe by speaking. I find connection by speaking. Listening is a lot harder for me. And going back to the question of why do I do the work that I do? Because sometimes I've had failed relationships. And some of what I teach about relationship comes from both being married for 20 years and also going through a pretty painful divorce. And so there's a lot of things that I learned from being divorced and from getting divorced and from the all the parts of my relationship that now I want to bring to the world. And I also want to bring to my other relationships. Listening is one of those skills that seems like it would come naturally to us as human beings, but for some of us more than others, it has to be a learned behavior.
Excellent. Okay, so you just mentioned different speaking when it comes to the masculine, feminine, and relationships. Say more.
I, as a verbal processor,
Yeah.
as a film and television actor, that transitioned when I had my children into using acting skills to help people bring their messages to the world. I've always been exposed to speaking. I've always worked on it as a practice. And like so many people, I've done Toastmasters and I've done speaking skills. I started in that direction. It's a very masculine step. Stand with your feet apart and stand with everything is from the perspective of a masculine speaking style. Then in 2018, I did a pretty deep mastermind program with a mentor of mine named Casey Baker. And her process was very much in the feminine. How do we move our bodies so that as we're speaking, we feel more embodied? And how do we bring, she was very much around feminine embodiment and using that as a speaking skill. And as I integrated all of that work, I realized that, wow, we need both. We need both. We are still operating in business in a masculine world, and we need to have the range to bring what I would call masculine speaking style to the world, to choose it. But in doing so, so often we throw out the power of feminine speaking. And the distinction I make between the two is feminine speaking is verbal processing. It is thinking out loud. It is saying something and then retracting it. It's trying it another way. It's speaking with the parenthesis. Oh, because then there's that. And on the other hand, there's this too. It's the natural way my brain wants to process information. I speak in circles. And when I didn't have the concept of this, that I also named feminine speaking, I used to call it, oh, blah, 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 verbal diarrhea, going on. And sometimes I would find myself as a verbal processor, not quite knowing where to end, and then feeling a little bit of shame. Feeling like, oh, I just went on and on. I just talked so much and I didn't really say anything. And this is really common for verbal processors to feel. But if instead I say, Joleene, I'm a verbal processor. I want to speak in the feminine about this topic we're talking about. Can you listen to me speak in the feminine for a minute or two? Then I've created a context where you know what's happening. Especially for people who are maybe married to verbal processors who are like, is she ever going to stop talking? Am I ever going to get a word in edgewise? No, I've said, I want to speak in the feminine. Then there's space. And I feel like I've been given room. I've taken the space for myself to say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. And it's sort of like this. And I've given myself a container in which to verbally process and speak.
Lisa,
Yeah.
This man right here does that. And I feel like I owe him a massive apology because as we work in this dynamic that's timed, we've had many conversations about being efficient. And because he's like that, which is not wrong.
Right.
Would you agree?
That's it.
Yeah. But along with that, though, there are times when it's like sometimes, I do go on and on. I'll say something 4 times, and it's like, okay, the first 2 were okay.
So this is a great example, and thank you for bringing that to something real. and also the other thing, thank you for mentioning, is that feminine speaking is available to and possible in any gender. Some people tend to speak more in what I call the feminine. And caveat is that a lot of people, that pushes a lot of people's buttons when you talk about polarity. And I get that. And I still use feminine and masculine because to me, they're iconic, archetypal, they're deep, they're meaningful.
Sure.
So yes, Ken can be someone who tends to speak in the feminine. And Ken, imagine how it would be different if you consciously said, okay, I'm thinking this out loud. It might be a different experience for Joleene to be able to listen. And then when I work with people on speaking skills, if they are people who speak in the feminine, I'll say, okay, great. There's your 3 minutes. You just spoke in the feminine. Bring that home to me now. Speak in the masculine. Speaking in the masculine is taking a pause, grounding down into the earth, considering all the pieces that you just found, editing them in your brain, and saying it in a concise and direct way that lands the period. So I know when you're finished. Boom.
That is so me.
I love it. Yeah. It's
This,
Right. And one's not better than the other, but they both have a place.
yeah.
I just love that this unfolded because it is exactly who we are.
Mhm.
And it's no secret if people follow me or listen to me that I am often in my masculine energy. I have never heard my communication defined like that.
And it's a powerful thing. And sometimes when I work with women, one of my clients right now, for example, is a young woman who's she's very connected to her feminine, but she works in a very masculine world. And so if I can help her understand that here's the place for thinking out loud, and some of that is beautiful to bring, but the more conscious we are of it, first of all, the more we claim it can, the more we're like, oh, this is my way of speaking and it's powerful. Then we can be our own masculine for it. We can be, okay, I know I'm speaking in the feminine, I'm thinking out loud, but first of all, I'm going to name it, which creates a container for it. So I'm going to think this out loud now. And I'm going to do it for just give me about a minute to think through this. And then I'm done. And then we can even bring that masculine piece again. So here's the essence of what I'm understanding now that I've spoken in the feminine for a minute. Boom. And then you get to practice building that range of masculine speaking style too. And Joleene, maybe it'll be an exercise for you to see what it feels like to think out loud, to explore.
Wow. Beautiful. I have another question for you. As we wrap things up, can you talk about how this kind of communication can elevate, change, even repair a relationship?
Well, the skill set of listening is powerful. And there's some sentence stems. There's one sentence stem I want to come back to. And I heard this first through my teacher. And it is the idea that these 3 words are magic. And the 3 words that are magic in relationship are, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense that you would feel that way. That makes sense that you would say that. And so it's one example of many, since I know we're wanting to wrap up. There's lots of ways that listening can be powerful. And I would say there's lots of ways in which giving ourselves the skill and the place to be fully self-expressed and making space for each other is super important too. Because if one person's just always the listener, that's not effective way to feel whole. So always building our range on all those things. But if you always come back to finding the places where you can say to your partner, that makes sense. It's the one I would end on.
What a gift.
I love that.
too.
Yes.
That makes sense, Lisa.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add, a point you want to make, or something I should have asked you and I didn't?
I think the most important thing I would share with people who are wanting to build their speaking and communication skills, but also their relational skills, is that the more we can accept and come from our own superpower, our own authentic truth, our own starting point of who we are, and trust that, and then expand our range, the more we have options and choice in how we relate with another human, and the more we have choice in how we bring ourselves out to the world.
So I'm going to mirror that. And what I hear you saying is, learning to fully embody and express who we are authentically, wholly, and without hesitation.
Yes. But the second part, so now you would say to me, is there more?
Is there more?
I could say, yeah, I said that's sort of what I said. I did say that, but I also said, Joleene, and then building on that place to expand the range of what we have access to.
Mm.
So good! Lisa, you're a gem.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, this was so fun. You asked great questions. And I use your relationship and the fact that you're doing what you're doing here together as a project as evidence for the possibilities for me and other people.
I love that. And I appreciate your time. It always goes so quick. And I, of course, will include information if people want to find you. And I know that they will in the show notes. And I would love to have you back for another episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. Thank you.
All right. And friends, thank you again for tuning in. Send us questions. For Lisa. Reach out to her. Her information is in the show notes. And my love, my life, my happiness, the reason I live and breathe.
I love you, baby.
Thank you for another great episode.
Yes, absolutely. It was great. Always learning.
Always. We'll see you next time, friends. Thank you.
Yeah.